So the idea of these 4 pillars, and we use this as a coaching framework at Insights for Life, is that when we're working with an individual, we cover the whole person. I'll give you one example. I remember I was working with one particular CEO. Initially, he was having a problem with his team. Turns out most of the women on the team is who he had problems with. And not from a point of disrespect or, something else. It was just, for some reason, there seemed to be a communication issue with the women on his team. I end up asking him a question. I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the level of effective communication that you have with your wife? He's like, I don't understand what this has to do with my team. I think I have great communication with my wife. It's okay, well, where would you put it? I'll put it at an 8. I'm not perfect, but I think I have great communication, Linnell. I said, all right, excellent. I want you to go home and I want you to ask your wife, where would she rate you on a scale of 1 to 10? She gave him an answer he didn't like, right? I believe she was like a 4 or something. Like, you're a 4. And he was like, well, why am I a 4? She says, because you don't listen. I said, hey, I want you to ask your wife, how can you get your listening skills with her up 2 points? Whatever she shares with you, that is going to be our practice, both in the home and in the workplace with your female employees. That's the correlation of the 4 pillars. Almost everything in our life intersects with another portion of our life. Even though the 4 pillars stand alone in terms of how we think about the table, they intersect in our lives. You are one person.
Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and purpose. You know it's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dreams. Right now. Inspirational perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live your dream. Your purpose now. Inspirational perspective. Let's slay your goals.
So first, let's talk about the 4 pillars of life. What are these pillars? Especially if this is the first time that you've heard this concept. What are the 4 pillars of life? And when I think about the 4 pillars of life and in the context of what I'm talking about, it's a framework that we use in coaching for Insights for Life. It's a framework that we use. And the idea is that the client is looking at these 4 pillars as if this is the table that they're going to build everything they intend to build throughout the coaching conversation, if that makes sense. Okay. So often we'll have a client who comes in and they want to, 5X, 10X their business. Let's say something like that. Sometimes I just want a 2X. I want a 3X. I want a 5X, 10X my business. Okay. We look at the vision that they have, and then we place it on the table of the 4 pillars of life. Let's say the client comes in, they want to lose weight. Same thing. We look at that vision, and then we place it on the table of the 4 pillars of life. I'll explain the table in a moment here. Let's say the client wants to get into a loving relationship. Same thing. We take a look at the vision, and I'll talk about the importance of the vision in a minute, but we take a look at the vision. If they don't have a vision, we help them distinguish that vision, get that vision very clear, and then we put it on the table of the 4 pillars of life. Okay. So let's start with the vision portion of it first. Why is the vision important? One of the distinctions I've made after coaching hundreds of executives, thousands of people, that whenever a person is experiencing some level of trouble when it comes to discipline, I have found that typically it's not a matter of poor discipline. People say, well, I'm just not disciplined enough. It's not a matter of poor discipline. It's a matter of truly unclear vision. Like you just don't see why you should do the thing that you're asking yourself to do, which is why you're not doing it. And I think initially for someone who believes they struggle with discipline, this is a pretty difficult concept to grasp because they say, well, no, I really do want to do it. But just wanting to do something isn't as powerful as clearly seeing it, the result of the action in your mind. There's something about when we're very clear about the outcome that changes our behavior. Case in point, almost you take a normal human being to the doctor, and the doctor's like, look, if you don't change what you're doing, then you have X amount of time to live. You have two types of people. You have the person that goes into denial, doesn't believe the doctor, and continues doing the same thing. And then you have the second person who's, when the doctor shares that with them, they're like, that is not what I see for my life. That is not the outcome that I wanted for my life. What I see is long life. What I see is being around my family longer. And then all of a sudden, the things that were difficult for them to do around, let's say, health and well-being, around diet, etc., all of a sudden, there is a new level of focus and, watch what shows up, discipline in that area of life. And so what I have found is when a person becomes clear about what the outcomes will be, there are two paths. One is denial, the other is discipline. And this is what I've noticed in clients throughout the years. Either one, high level of denial, it's not going to happen to me, so I don't have to change my behavior, right? Or, you know what? I don't like that. The outcome that I want looks like this. And so a high level of discipline that transforms their life. And so in many ways, clear vision equals discipline. All right. So then let's take this when we look at the 4 pillars of life, which, by the way, pillar number 1 is health and well-being. Pillar number 2 is relationships and love. Pillar number 3 is work and money. And pillar number 4 is purpose and spirituality. And how I want you to think about these 4 pillars when I talk about the table is that these pillars represent the table of your life. And each pillar is one leg of the table. And so when you're trying to build something in your life, you're building on that table, the table of pillars in terms of how healthy you are, how you handle relationship, whether it's romantic, whether it's professional, whether it's platonic, how you do your work and money, how you handle work, how you show up with work, how you handle money, your knowledge in both areas, and your overall purpose and spirituality. Each one of those pillars function as a leg on the table, which means that if there is a leg or if there is a pillar that you are weak in, the table is now wobbling. You ever been to dinner at a restaurant? Let's say a really nice restaurant. And you sit down with your loved one, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your date. You're excited about the upcoming meal. And you put your elbows on the table and all of a sudden it rocks. And you spill your date's water on them, right? Or maybe on the table. You say, oh, I'm sorry about that. Then you're like, oh man, this table is not going to work. Now, why won't the table work? Because one of the legs happened to be uneven. And so we cannot have a dinner on this table because the table is not solid. The table does not have a solid foundation. Every time we move, something on the table is going to move, which means we could lose a plate. We could lose our water. We could lose our drinks. They could spill, however it may be, but we probably should pause, get some support, have somebody stabilize the table. I want you to think the same way about the 4 pillars of life. More often than not, one of the reasons I believe, and I see people not be successful with building what they want to build in their lives is because they're building on an uneven table. And one of those pillars happen to be out. And because that pillar is out, it is disrupting the vision. It is disrupting everything that they're looking to build. And so the action can actually be there, but they're losing momentum because of things that are sliding off the table due to a weak pillar. Due to a weak pillar. That weak pillar could be their health and well-being. That weak pillar could be how they handle relationships. Very simply, professional relationships. Maybe there's not a lot of trust. Difficult to build a business that way. That pillar could be how they handle money. Everything else is right. Health is right. Relationships are right. But, you get an influx of money. Maybe you get an invoice paid from a big client. You spend it. Now there's nothing for payroll. Things keep falling off the table. Things keep falling off the table. Maybe there's no spiritual alignment. And so as a result, you lack power in your life. You have the knowledge. You have the other things that you need. It seems like it just never gets going. That is what I'm talking about when it comes to the importance of understanding the 4 pillars of life and how they operate as a table. And how what we build essentially in terms of the vision we have, the goals that we create, are sitting on that table. And if the table is balanced, then I can build quite a bit. I can build a lot. If the table is not balanced, then it can either, one, be difficult to build, or I can have success building only for it to fall down because I haven't properly built one of my pillars. So the idea of these 4 pillars, and we use this as a coaching framework at Insights for Life, is that when we're working with an individual, we cover the whole person. And we do a lot of work with leaders. And so the idea is to strengthen leaders in every dimension of their lives. So let me give you an example, because I've actually had conversations with CEOs where they say, hey, if your company comes in and works with this individual, what will you guys work on? And I said, well, it just really depends. You're giving me a focal area. Hey, this leader, they need support in their leadership in this area. Okay, that's excellent. And so the idea is that you experience the ROI, right? They see the development in that area. In terms of the conversations that I have with that executive, with that leader, it can range from any of those 4 pillars: health and well-being, relationships and love, work and money, purpose and spirituality, because most often the thing that needs to be worked on is a symptom of one of those 4 pillars. And there's never a direct correlation. Every individual is different. And so when I'm working with the leader, there have been times where I'll give you one example. I remember I was working with one particular CEO, and he was having a really difficult time. As we distinguished it, initially, he was having a problem with his team, right? And then we started to kind of narrow it down that it wasn't everybody on the team. Turns out most of the women on the team is who he had problems with. And not from a point of disrespect or, something else. It was just, for some reason, there seemed to be a communication issue with the women on his team. And so we distinguished it down to the women. And I end up asking him a question. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the level of effective communication that you have with your wife? He's like, I don't understand what this has to do with my team. And I was like, once again, how would you rate the level of effective communication that you have with your wife? I think I have great communication with my wife. It's okay. Well, where would you put it? I'll put it at an 8. I'm not perfect, but I think I have great communication, Linnell. I said, all right, excellent. I want you to take on a practice. I want you to go home, and I want you to ask your wife, where would she rate you on a scale of 1 to 10? Now, you all already know if he gave himself an 8, that his wife wasn't that high, right? So anyway, he goes home, has a conversation with his wife, and says, hey, look, I'm trying to figure out why I'm having communication issues with certain people on the team. And my coach wants me to ask you, where would you rank me on a rating scale of 1 to 10 in terms of my communication with you? And so she gave him an answer he didn't like, right? I believe she was like a 4 or something. Like, you're a 4. And he was like, well, why am I a 4? She says, because you don't listen. You know, I can tell you something. You're not listening to me. You talk over me, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. You know, so you don't, in my opinion, you're not a good listener. So he brought that back to coaching. And of course, he was in his feelings. I can't believe she said this, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, now I want you to go to the women on your team. And I want you to ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do they think you fully hear what you are saying to them, what they are saying to you as their leader, right? And so he's reluctant, but he goes out. He does this. Turns out that, of course, the ladies on his team, they give him a 4, right? But they say, hey, you know, in terms of being heard, there are many times I don't feel like I'm being heard. And so I gave him a practice. I said, hey, I want you to ask your wife, how can you get your listening skills with her up 2 points? How do we get to a 6? Ask her that. And then once whatever you find, whatever she shares with you, that is going to be our practice, both in the home and in the workplace with your female employees. And so what do you think happened? What do you think happened when he got feedback from his female employees 30 days later? Hey, do you feel like my listenings increased? Based on his wife's feedback, right? All of a sudden, there was an increase in listening. I don't know what you did different, but this feels better. And so anyway, that's the correlation of the 4 pillars, okay? Almost everything in our life intersects with another portion of our life. Even though the 4 pillars stand alone in terms of how we think about the table, they intersect in our lives. You are one person. You are one person. You may compartmentalize how you show up in the workplace, but you are still one person. And so how you show up in the workplace is impacted by every one of the pillars of life. Your health, your well-being, your relationships, who you love, how you love them, your work, what you do in terms of like your commitment to excellence, your financial knowledge or lack thereof, your financial discipline or lack thereof, your clarity of purpose or lack thereof, and your spiritual alignment or lack thereof. All those things impact every other pillar in your life. Now, let me say this about the 4 pillars of life as well. One of the things that I share with my Slay Your Goals members on a regular basis is when you look at these 4 pillars, I want you to think about they're not in the order that they're in doesn't align with their importance overall. Okay. Because if they did, then more than likely purpose and spirituality would be number 1. Health and well-being would be number 2. And then, and people might not understand this, but work and money, and then relationships and love. All right. And the reason why work and money is just in case somebody's like just clutch their pearls, like, huh, really? The reason work and money is in front of relationship and love, especially like, let's just take a man, right? Ladies, how many of you want to be with a man whose work and money pillar is like, I want you to really think about this, right? Whose work and money pillar is behind relationship and love. So after I fall in love with you, I'll get my money handled. Right? See, when you put it in terms like that, people begin to understand. Okay? No different than even your own children. If you do not have the means to take care of your family, then the family is dysfunctional. One of the reasons our community is in the place that it is because for the most part, our work and money hasn't been handled, and that has been part of what has decimated the family. They attack us financially. And so if I can attack you financially, I can attack your family, right? And so, brothers, those of you who are single, the idea is if you have a desire for family, is that you solidify your work and money pillar. You solidify your work and money pillar so that way you can function wholly and fully in the pillar of relationship and love. Okay. And I believe that, especially in marriage, it's you're teaming. And so even if you can't show up in the way that you intend to, your wife can, right? Your wife can. And the children don't feel anything because things are handled financially, then things are also handled in the pillar of love. All right. So let's tackle, one more thing about that. Also, when you look at the pillars, one of the things that I share often is that because that purpose and spirituality pillar is number one, that health and well-being pillar is number two. When we order them in the way that we do, health and well-being being number one and purpose and spirituality being pillar number four, the other two pillars that sit between it are really being held up by those two pillars. If I want to take my relationships to the next level, I first need to be in solid relationship with myself, health and well-being, right? And I need to be in alignment with the Creator. And then those principles that I'm enacting in those areas actually begin to take care of relationship and love and work and money. And so I believe people have, especially in the world today, most people are focused, number one, on work and money, spinning their wheels trying to figure out, well, why is this not working? And it's because pillar one and pillar four are out of alignment. Though they're not built up. The table is wobbly on both sides. Everything you build falls. And so health and well-being handled, purpose and spirituality handled, all of a sudden the relationship and the money fall in. Now, why is that? And this is based in principle. With the conversation we're having is principle. The reason that is because when I'm spiritually aligned with the Creator, that means I'm in integrity with His principles. When I'm in integrity with His principles, then my relationships work. When I'm in integrity with His principles, my finances work because He has rules and principles for both. Rules and principles in terms of how I engage with my wife, rules and principles in terms of how I engage with my parents, rules and principles in terms of how I engage with my family, my children, so on and so forth. And so when I'm in purposeful alignment with the Creator, that means that I'm fulfilling those principles, which means my relationships work. And then you can take that to the money. You can take that to everything else. So health and well-being. Health and well-being. When you look at health and well-being, first let me explain the three categories that I think about when I think about health and well-being. So number one, I think about physical health. That lives in that pillar. Number two, I think about emotional fitness. You guys know how important I believe emotions are, right? We do not want to give up our emotional collateral. This is something that we should be in full control of. You'll see this in the principle I share. Okay. And then number three is your mental dexterity. And that's your ability to learn, your ability to take in and process new information, your ability to obtain knowledge and act on that knowledge, your mental dexterity. Okay. That is, when I think about health and well-being, that is what that is. Okay. So then what are the principles that I believe are most important when you are looking at your health and well-being? Well, number one, I'm going to go to the principle of sleep cycles. And I'm going to talk about these sleep cycles in a minute, but I want to talk about cycles overall, because the law of rhythm says that we will always go through certain cycles. So even in what I'm sharing, this is not about perfection. It's about knowledge and alignment. Like, how do I more closely align with these principles. So the principle of sleep cycles basically says that we must align rest with the body's rhythm. The consequence of aligning rest with my body's rhythm is that I then have optimal energy and I have optimal clarity. Now, I think we know how important energy is, right? And by the way, many of us struggle with energy. A whole lot of us struggle with energy. And I believe the number one reason many of us struggle with energy is because we're not observing the principles of sleep, period. The body operates in cycles. And so if I'm paying attention to those cycles, I'm resting when I'm supposed to, I'm waking when I'm supposed to. And then that provides the energy I need to do my purpose work and the clarity of vision I need to be disciplined. When I lack energy and I lack clarity, then I lack discipline, right, from the clarity perspective. And then I also lack the ability to take massive action. And so if I don't have the ability to take massive action and I'm not disciplined, what do you get? Mediocrity. That's what you get. So the idea of the principle of sleep cycles is that I'm respecting the natural recovery cycle of my body. And when I respect the natural recovery cycle of my body, I get higher performance from my body in every pillar. If I'm rested, I'm more patient with my children. If I'm rested, I'm more patient with my wife. And so we can begin to see how just in that example, you can see how this will impact every other pillar. Okay? All right. So number one, health and well-being, the principle of sleep cycles. All right. And it is a principle. There is a principle laid out. And the idea is that we're getting, at least 7 hours of good rest. All right. Principle number 2, the rule of hydration. This is a principle too. Okay. This is a principle too. The rule of hydration says that small daily actions create major vitality. Small daily actions create major vitality. What is a small daily action that correlates to the rule of hydration? We already know. Drinking water and consuming water. It's not just what you drink, it's also what you eat. So am I consuming in the fruits and vegetables that I eat the amount of water that is necessary to move my body forward, especially when the Creator made me majority water? The majority of who I am is water, H2O, 70 to 80%. Every organ in my body, the mass, when you look at every organ of the body, the major component of every organ is H2O. One of the reasons I believe many of our bodies start to shut down the older we get is because we have basically, put our body in drought for years. Now, you take a piece of land and you don't give it water. Over time, what happens? Everything dies. Everything dies. And so if I take my body and I'm not giving it adequate water, over time, what happens? Everything inside me begins to die. And I believe that many of the health issues we have are simply from not paying attention to those two principles. Sleep, water. That simple. If you thought I was about to come with something really like groundbreaking and different, sometimes it's the simple stuff. It's the simple stuff that really, really, really messes us up. Now, I do want to take these two principles just a bit deeper, because when you think about the principle of sleep cycles, the human body operates in natural cycles of rest and activity. And when we disrupt them, What it does is it weakens energy, it weakens focus. Now, why does this matter? Chronic sleep neglect undermines every other pillar, period. Like, it undermines every other pillar. And so the idea of the principle of sleep cycles is that when I respect natural rhythms, then I have better focus, I have longevity in my life, I have a better mood, right? You know, I grew up in church, and sometimes something negative would happen. They'd be like, that's the devil. Like, nah, you just didn't get enough sleep. That's why you feel like that. You're exhausted, right? It shifts your mood and it shifts your productivity in a completely different direction. Jim Rohn said, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live. Like, and these are two phenomenal ways that you can take care of your body. Now, I want to break down the rule of hydration real quick. Overall, again, the definition, a simple, consistent practice of drinking enough water and consuming enough water in a way that dramatically impacts brain clarity, mood, and energy. Same thing, right? Why does it matter? Small hinges swing big doors. That little practice of making sure you get enough water could dramatically shift and change your life. Hydration is foundational to physical and cognitive performance, period. We've already covered two of the principles for health and well-being, and I'm moving into the third principle for health and well-being. And that principle is the law of adaptation. Now, I want you to listen to me really carefully. Like, just open your mind. The law of adaptation, why would I bring in the law of adaptation for health and well-being? Well, the way God created the human body is that the human body actually grows stronger under challenge. So when I push my body to do things, it actually strengthens my body. The law of adaptation basically states that whenever I apply stress in the right measure, it actually builds me up. I can go a lot of places with that. One of the things that comes to mind almost immediately when I talk about the law of adaptation, the law of adaptation too. I'm not saying that correctly. The law of adaptation is how we've created a society that if you cause me any stress or you make me feel uncomfortable in any way, you're wrong. And so what I believe is what we've done is we've created a society where people don't thrive and grow. The body, the law of adaptation says, and I want you to think this in terms of more than just the body. Excuse me. The body grows stronger when it is stressed properly and given time to recover. So it's no different than, thinking about going to lift weights. If I want strong arms, then what I will do is lift something with my arms to the point of fatigue, right? And then give my arms some time to rest. And when I come back, my arms are actually stronger than what they were before I fatigued them. Which is why the first two principles are so important. Because then if we go back and we say, okay, well, principle number one is the principle of sleep cycles. So then my recovery is important, right? Principle number two is the rule of hydration. So then how I nourish myself is important. Then if I'm doing those things, then I can begin to move into the law of adaptation, where now I am purposely stressing my body to strengthen my body. And this is how I make sure my health and well-being pillar is strong. Why does this matter? Growth, we all know, does not come from comfort. It comes from resistance. And so just like everything else on God's green planet, my body requires some level of resistance. I should be putting my body through intentional resistance. This is what we have the gym for, right? But it could be walks where I walk to exhaustion. I don't think many people don't do that. Like walk to exhaustion. But what this is saying is that it actually strengthens the body, right? Where I work out to exhaustion, it strengthens the body. What this is saying is that if I follow the law of adaptation, then in my health and well-being, then I should be doing something that intentionally stresses the body so that the body can grow stronger. So how does this work? Well, one, it works on muscles. We know that, right? And here's the thing. There's another principle that I don't cover here that basically says either you are progressing or digressing, period. So the same thing is happening in our physical bodies. Either I am progressing or I'm digressing, right? And then as we mature, there is just the physical element of the aging process that pulls on us towards digression, which means if I wasn't serious about putting my body under stress purposely in my youth, I must get serious about it as I mature, right? As that normal, digression begins to, hit, because I am stressing the body, I'm actually stronger than I would be otherwise. Okay? There are things that I can do in my physical body now that I could not do when I was young because, frankly, I didn't have to. That's the beauty of youth, right? I was able to get by. Now, I was telling somebody I stretch every night, right? Taking my body through the law of adaptation on purpose so that way I feel the growth. I sense the growth. There's certain things that just must happen every day if I'm going to follow this principle. Okay, so that's health and well-being. Now, again, if you go back and listen to series one of the things I talked about is the power of knowing a principle, but then having to deal with preference. And I already know the preference for many of us is that I don't want to have to work that hard. Linnell, I just got my hair done. You telling me to sweat? Right? I'm going to sweat it all out. You know how much money I spent on my hair? And what I'm saying is, if you want a healthy body, if you believe in principle and you want a healthy body, these are just the principles that work. They work. And you can step outside of them if you want to. But here's the thing. If your health fails, how will that impact every other pillar in your life? Purpose and spirituality, pillar number 4. The principles I like to highlight here. Principle number 1, the law of alignment. I talked about this, I believe, last week in the second part of the series. Fulfillment comes when your actions match your values. I really want you to, again, pillar number 1, pillar number 4, hold up the other 2 pillars. Here is why. Fulfillment comes when my actions match my values. So my health and well-being is handled. My energy levels are there, which means I'm able to take action. But the only action I'm taking is action that is in alignment with my purpose. And because those actions are in alignment with my purpose, the outcome is a deep sense of fulfillment. Now, when we get to emotional regulation, can you see how if I'm fulfilled, I have a higher ability to regulate myself? I don't need anything else. I don't need a bunch of alcohol. I don't need a bunch of smoke. All those things, I don't have to numb anything, because the Creator's promise, the Creator's principle says that if I am acting in alignment with my values, with the values that He's instilled inside of me, that I get as a consequence a sense of fulfillment. I'm not moving around with deep levels of anxiety and lack of purpose and loss. And so the law of alignment actually supports me with eliminating inner conflict. So if I can eliminate the inner arguments that are happening, that means that I am in full sync to do my work. I'm not sitting up like, well, should I do that? Shouldn't I do that? No, I'm not good enough to do that. No, I'm not going back and forth about things in my mind. I'm in alignment, and so there's no inner conflict. I know what I'm supposed to do, and so I'm able to focus in those areas. So all of a sudden, you see how this hits working money? All of a sudden, my clarity is there, which means my productivity is there. I hope I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. The law of alignment, how it's defined, is that life is fulfilling when actions align with values and purpose. This is why you hear me say your purpose has got to be number one. Because when I'm aligned with my purpose, I actually get the promise of fulfillment. So why does this matter? If I'm not aligned, if I'm misaligned, misalignment creates tension. Like, think about anything like that is misaligned. Let's say the door is misaligned of the studio. Well, it's going to create tension. Trying to open and close the door, you're going to feel tension. Got to pull it, got to yank it. Like, hey, man, we've all been there. Like, you got to put a little muscle behind that door. Right? There's tension because the door is not properly aligned. It's no different in our lives. And so misalignment creates stress. It creates regret. So now I'm replaying things and living in the past. You see how it's a loss of power? And alignment brings clarity. What does clarity create again? Discipline. Right? If I'm clear on my vision, I get discipline. I hope you guys see the correlations here, right? And so when I'm aligned, I have a sense of clarity and inner peace. And how it works is that because I'm living in integrity with my values, I then have an inner strength and what seems to be an external confidence. Man, how is this guy so confident? How can he speak so confidently? Because there's no inner conflict. Nothing's going on in here saying, you know that ain't right. You don't even do that yourself, right? It's like, no, I'm in alignment. And so because I'm in alignment, I can move with confidence. I can be myself. You don't have to agree with it. But I know I'm in alignment with myself. Now, if something is revealed and I see something out of alignment, what do? I handle it. So I remain in alignment. Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. Now I'm in harmony. I'm in personal harmony. Hey, look, you can spend some time with me like, I don't like that he do this. I don't like that he do that. You can feel all kinds of ways. That doesn't matter. How do I align with myself, with the Creator, this is why I believe this life is such a personal mission. And a lot of times we distract ourselves from the personal mission by being so curious and obsessed with everybody else. That's why I don't have time, man. I don't have time to be obsessed with you and what you got going. It's hard enough to stay in alignment for me to be worried about whether or not you in alignment. Look, you do you, I'm going to do me. I'm going to work to stay in alignment. Okay. Number two. And by the way, a lot of this probably isn't new for you all. Like if you've been listening to me, you're like, okay, he said this in different ways. All right. Number 2, the principle of stillness. The principle of stillness. When it comes to your purpose and spirituality, the ability to be still and be in silence. That is a complete principle, you all. The principle of stillness states, silence and reflection create the clarity that noise never will. I want you to notice something. It keeps coming back to a consequence of clarity. So my health and well-being principles drive the ability for me to be clear, right? If I'm getting sleep, I'm hydrated, I'm getting rest, I'm putting my body through intentional stress, it drives the ability to be clear, right? And then when my purpose and spirituality, when I'm in alignment, right? The alignment brings clarity, and the stillness creates clarity. There are folks who are like, I'm having a hard time with vision. I'm having a hard time getting clear. Are we beginning to see why? Maybe you just need to be still. Maybe you need to sit down and do a self-assessment on your personal integrity. Maybe you need to lay down and get some sleep. Maybe you need to just drink some water. Like sometimes we want to make this super complicated. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, I'm clear now. I believe many of us, we avoid the clarity because we're scared of the work. We're scared of when I see it, then I'm going to have to go do it. But what we don't realize is that when you see it, if you're doing those things, you will actually have what's necessary to go do it at that point. Without stillness, what happens is you become reactionary and directionless. Without stillness, life is reactionary. We live in a world that is so noisy. This is why I believe most of us are being pulled by external influences. We're reacting to external influences. So how does this work? It is imperative that you create space to just be and listen. Listen to the Creator first. Listen to yourself second. Like, do you even know what you really think? Like what you, outside of the external influences, but what you really think. So the Creator, yourself, and then your purpose. So based on what the Creator's telling me, based on the dialogue I can have with myself, what's next in terms of my purpose? And that's where we get direction. In the stillness, in the silence. That's where our direction comes from. In prayer, what do you do when you pray? You are still. You are still. That's why the practice of prayer is so powerfully important. To start the day with prayer is to start the day being still. Being with the Creator and being with self for the clarity of purpose. That's why it's such a powerful practice. And by the way, science has measured this. Be like, yeah, people that pray, people that get still, they have higher levels of, well-being and satisfaction and all these different things. And of course, they're puzzled by it. How is that possible? And it's like, it's a principle. It's a principle. So that's principle number 2, the principle of stillness. Principle number 3 for purpose and spirituality. The law of purpose alignment. Now, we talked about this last week a bit. But the idea of purpose alignment is that I begin to learn how to anchor everything that I do and everything that I am in my why for existing. And the idea of purposeful alignment is that all of a sudden, I'm anchoring actions in my why to ensure that I can take sustainable and meaningful action. So when it's anchored in my why, I know I won't give up on it. It's because it's my why for existing. It's my why for being. And so it's not something I can give up on. It's something I must commit myself to. A life without purpose is a life of a drifter. A life without purpose is a life that is externally driven. And by the way, there are plenty of external drivers out here to keep you busy for a lifetime. But then what happens is you wake up one day, you have a lot of regret because you've been moving based on what others have said versus what the Creator has told you. A life with purpose drives you in a clear direction. You know exactly where you're going. You may not know how you're going to get there, but you know exactly what the destination is. So one of the ways, if you're hearing this and you're like, man, I'm not sure I live that way. One of the things that you can do is start by asking yourself this question every day. What impact am I supposed to make today? This could be your prayer too. Like just in the stillness, God, what impact am I supposed to make today? What impact am I supposed to make today? I promise you that living in alignment with those principles, there's a scripture that says, seek ye first the kingdom, seek ye first your purpose, seek you first. Like, why are you supposed to be here? Serve that, everything else comes. So, pillar number 2, relationships and love. Number 1 for relationship is the law of forgiveness. If you are going to be in relationship with another human being, are you all following this? What is one guarantee that you will get from a human being? That guarantee is that they are flawed, that they are imperfect. You can't go into a marriage and be successful if you haven't sat with the idea that you yourself are flawed. And so this other person is also flawed, and I'm going to love them beyond their flaws. There would be no need for a covenant if we weren't flawed. If I were perfect, there'd be no need for my wife to be in covenant with me because I would perfectly understand her, show up perfectly, do the things that are perfect. Like everything she'd be like, if anything, she'd run away because it's just too perfect. Oh my God, I can't be with this, right? This man is too perfect. This is not real. But because I'm not perfect, my wife, in order to be with me, has to be willing from the beginning to forgive me. I remember I told one person I was working with, they want to be in a relationship without being hurt. It's impossible. It's impossible. The person that you love the most is going to hurt you the most. That's a principle. Let me say it again. The person that you love the most is going to be the person that hurts you the most. Think about your childhood. Nobody has disappointed you like your parents. Why? Because you love them so deeply. Right? And there's something about you that they didn't see that you wanted them to see, and that hurt you. And they didn't see it because they're not perfect. They never will be. But you stay in relationship with them because you know they genuinely love you despite the imperfection. And so if you're going to stay in good relationship with them, then you have to embody this law of forgiveness. No other way around it. The law of forgiveness states that in order to be in genuine relationship, you have to let go and free your heart. Whoo, that's hard. That is hard to do. Let go and free my heart. Are you? But the law states that when you let go, letting go is a release of resentment, a release of grudges, because resentment and grudges actually maintain emotional energy. Like they take up emotional energy. And so when I let it go, it actually frees emotional energy for connection. One of the reasons we're not fully connected sometimes to the people we quote unquote love is because we're harboring resentments and grudges. Like this. And so then there's no free emotional energy for full connection. And so that impacts every part of your life. If you're married, it impacts your intimate connection, your sexual connection. Like all those things are impacted. And by the way, it's impacting you and your ability to enjoy being in love. If your spouse is like, law of forgiveness, I'm giving up resentment, I'm giving up grudges, I love you, I forgive you, then you be like, why they seem so happy with me? You know, like why? Well, it's your fault. You're not letting go. You holding. That's why it ain't as good for you. That's why it don't feel as intimate. You say, well, they just do this and that. Well, okay, but again, this is a very personal journey. Maybe if you just forgave them, things would be better. Why does this matter? Bitterness is like rust. It will corrode a relationship. It will corrode trust. It will corrode intimacy. And forgiveness is like auto body repair, right? Come in, sand it off, repaint it, brand new. Forgiveness repairs and frees. That's how it works. You let something just sit and rust, eventually it's going to fall apart. And that's based on the law of entropy. Okay, eventually it's just going to fall apart. So how does this work? Forgiveness is a choice. But when I choose to forgive, you might be like, Linnell, so why would you? If your wife does something, my wife is a human being. So because my wife is a human being, she makes mistakes. She's imperfect. She has done things that hurt my feelings. Because by the way, the person that you love the most is the person that hurts you the most, right? That hurts my feelings, where I feel like maybe she overlooked, didn't, whatever it may be. How the law of forgiveness works is that when I choose to forgive her, it actually restores peace for me. It restores peace. It rebuilds trust. Trust is a choice. Trust is a choice. Like, you have to earn my trust. And it's like, okay. But really the earning is you just putting something out there in terms of a time frame for when you choose to give it. And then when you choose to give it, because I'm imperfect, who's going to say I'm going to remain in your trust? Like, you're going to have to continue to trust me day after day. You can forgive even if reconciliation is impossible. I love you, and I'm going to forgive you. But I ain't hanging with you no more. You see the difference? Like, the relationship we had will not be reconciled in the way that it was before. But I'm not going to hold a grudge against you. I'm not going to give you that level of emotional energy. I need that emotional energy to create powerfully over here. And so I'm going to love you from a distance. I'm going to pray for you from a distance. I'm going to hope well for you from a distance because I don't want to maintain that resentment in my heart. I want my emotional energy to be clean and clear for me so I can connect and be aligned. But I'm not inviting you to my house. I still love you though, but you're not. Yeah. Y'all get that? You can still like fully forgive somebody and be like, but just you can't get that close no more. Forgiveness is not this is a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. I love this one. Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a constant attitude. It is a constant attitude. Let me tell you something. Right now, the way the government of the United States of America is being run, I know, hey, you don't have to like it all, but you have to notice allowing resentment and grudges and bitterness to harbor inside of you. That disease will eat you faster than it'll eat the person you're upset with. Be like, you know what? Let me pray. I don't got to be with them. I don't got to hang out with them. Let me pray for them. Let me forgive them. Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a constant attitude. Number 2, relationships and love. That was principle number 1, relationships and love. Principle number 2, the rule of emotional regulation. The rule of emotional regulation. Here's the definition of this principle. Emotions work as signals, not commands. Let me say that again. Emotions are supposed to function as signals, not commands. If I'm irritated with someone, it's a signal. It is not a command that I get to go in on you. That all of a sudden I get to say what I want to say, right? It's just a signal. And emotional maturity means that I have the ability to pause before I react. Emotional intelligence means that I have the ability to actually quantify and be clear about what my next action and what my next words, how they would impact you emotionally. Emotional intelligence is not being wise about my emotions. Emotional intelligence is being wise about the other person I care about's emotions. If I do this, this is how it's going to make them feel. If I say this, this is how it's going to make them feel. And so the way that the rule of emotional regulation works is that by pausing and filtering our emotion through principle. Again, right? This conversation is about principle versus preference. I know you prefer to let them get it all, right? I know you prefer to go from 0 to 100. And by the way, they may actually deserve it, right? Like what they just did, they deserve for you to go to 100 on them. Like and you have to ask yourself, based on this principle, by pausing and filtering through the emotion, what is the wise response, not the right response? You guys get the difference in that? Because you can be justified in going in. Like you go, and by the way, like when we go in, we'll go back and we'll get justification from other people. Hey, so here's what happened, right? I'm in the store. The cashier says this. And they're like, what? I know. So then I did X, Y, and Z. And they're like, yeah, I mean, they had it coming. They had it coming. Okay, so you were right. But were you wise? Did you represent yourself in the way that you intend to represent yourself? If you are operating in alignment with the Creator, did you represent the Creator in the way that He would like to be represented in your life? Like, was it the wise choice? Did somehow that interaction weaken you somewhere else, whether just in your own integrity or in how someone else sees you? Would you have reacted that way if a big client were nearby? Again, it was right? You were justified, right? But you want to be seen as wise with the client. So it's like, no, I would have made a wiser choice. Emotional regulation. Here's how this works. When I pause and filter my emotion through principle, right? Principle versus preference. I begin to have wiser responses and healthier bonds as a result. How many of our bonds are weak because we haven't been using wisdom in our interactions? And you can be right every time. And being right every time can weaken your bonds. It can weaken your relationships. That is principle number 2, the rule of emotional regulation. The rule of emotional regulation. Number 3, the rule of reciprocity. The rule of reciprocity. Okay, so Linnell, what is this? What is the rule of reciprocity? Again, remember, we're now looking at pillar number 2, relationships and love. The rule of reciprocity states, give before you expect to receive. Now, how might that impact relationships? If I'm giving before I expect to receive, what I'm doing, and this is another principle, is I'm increasing the bank accounts of everybody around me. So when I need something in my relationships, they're more than happy to give. And what this does is it deepens the bonds that I have with other people through service. I am willing to extend myself to you because of how you served me. So when I'm of service to the community is willing to show up for me and vice versa. You all see how this works? And so the full definition of this rule of reciprocity is when I give value first, I give of my time, I give of my love, I give of my support, it creates trust and mutual respect. And the reason this matters is because now the relationship is thriving because both people are coming at the relationship with a commitment of service. So when two people are coming to a relationship with the commitment to serve one another, then how can the relationship fall apart? I am here to serve you. I have a contract with you. Now, this works professionally. You can take the relationship that Ade and I have. If I come to Ade with a commitment of service, how can I serve him? How can I give to him? That means I'm telling him things I don't have to tell him. Hey, man, because I care about you, let me tell you about this. It has nothing to do with our professional relationship, but let me tell you what I believe about this. Let me help you in these ways. Think about this in your business. Think about, how can I serve you? And then he's saying, how can I serve you? Okay, we have a professional agreement for me to serve you. And so how do I show up there? It strengthens the bond. There is a healthier work bond. Same thing in a marriage, same thing in a parent-child relationship, child-parent relationship. When I am here to serve you, and by the way, it's something we're teaching my son now. Hey, man, be like, hey, empty the dishwasher. Oh, hey, we serve you all day. You must learn how to serve. This is why I believe chores for children are imperative. They have to learn to serve. You're not just being served. You spoil a child rotten, you're basically teaching the child that service is not necessary in their relationships. We'll end with pillar number 3, work and money. working money. So Linnell, how do these principles get my money right? So last week, I spent a great deal of time going through principle number 1, which is the 80-20 principle. Okay. If you missed it, you got to go back and check out last week's show. It's Pareto's Law. The definition real fast is 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions, right? How do I get to that 20%? Well, we just covered these other principles, right? The principle of alignment. All these things will support me in that. Why does it matter? Most people drown in busyness instead of maximizing their impact. And how it works is you identify the vital few things that you should be working on, and you cut the trivial many. And I love this quote: being busy is not the same as being productive. It's just not. Most of us are busy. Very few of us are productive. And that's, you get this 80-20 principle under control in your life, it will take you to the next level. Pillar number 3, working money. Principle number 2, the principle of opportunity cost. The principle of opportunity cost. Every yes is also a no to something else. Every yes is also a no to something else. And the idea of the principle of opportunity cost is that it forces clarity on your trade-offs. What am I saying yes to? I'm being very, very clear about this, right? What am I saying yes to? And what am I saying no to? The principle of opportunity cost. The other way to think about this, especially for those of you who don't know how to say no, every yes is costing you something. Every yes is costing you something. So you should be asking yourself, what is this yes costing me? When I say yes to this thing, am I really counting the cost? So why does this matter? Most poor decisions happen because the hidden cost of the choice wasn't adequately weighed. Let's be clear. If you actually weighed the decision you're making and you knew something negative was going to happen, then you wouldn't do it. But you did it because you were being reactionary, right? We talked about that. And you said yes, maybe because there's little to no self-love and you don't know how to say no. And so now you've gone down a road, you're beginning to realize that you're not maximizing your time, that you don't feel fulfilled because you're not in alignment with your purpose. You're taking all this action in an area where there's no opportunity cost, and you begin to have regret because that poor decision didn't properly weigh the hidden cost of saying yes. So how does this work? When you understand the principle of opportunity cost, you clearly see trade-offs around wise investments of time, wise investments of money, and wise investments of energy. Because you're asking yourself, if I say yes to this, are there any hidden costs? If I say yes to this financial investment, are there any hidden fees? Up front, it sounds real good. Can you show me the paperwork? Well, sir, what's this? Why is there 2% fee on this? Why is there 3% fee on that? Why is there a 5% fee on this? Wait a second. That's going to cut into my interest. That means I'm not going to get the opportunity cost I thought I would receive. No, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to tie my money up like that. I don't want to tie my energy up like that. You see the correlation? I don't want to tie my time up like that. Why? Because my time and energy are two of the most expensive things I can give away. The principle of opportunity cost. Number 3. The law of reputation, work and money. The law of reputation. Here, these are principles. If you go back to the first part of this series, I talk about how I believe that principles are correlated to God's law, right? And that when we act in alignment with these principles, then we see fruit. When we don't act in alignment, we see things we don't want to see. The law of reputation. It's a phenomenal place to end. Your reputation takes years to build and seconds to destroy. So then the question becomes, what kind of reputation are you building? I can't tell you how many times there's been someone who has served me in some capacity where they've done an outstanding job, and that becomes their reputation with me. Or they've done a poor and mediocre job, and that becomes their reputation with me. And I might not say anything. Then comes a big opportunity. And in order for them to get this opportunity, someone says, hey, Linnell, you've been on WVON how long? 13 years. Do you know so-and-so? They said they worked there. Do you know this person? They want this particular role with me. Oh, what do you think that conversation is going to come down to? The reputation that they built over the time we've been together. And here it is, this person who has not been observing this principle doesn't even know that what comes next in their life is based on a principle that they didn't pay attention to. Or let's say they held the principle up. Man, this man is phenomenal. If you bring him on board, you're bringing on an asset. Still, a lot of times we don't know that the reason the door opened is based on the principle of the law of reputation. I can look back over my life, and there's certain times where I made financial jumps where it didn't have anything to do with investment. It didn't have anything to do with my money knowledge. It had everything to do with my reputation. You should hire him. If there's anybody I know who can solve problems and will be committed to making sure that it is resolved, it's Linnell Harris. You should hire him. I go in for the interview. I've heard nothing but good things about you, young man. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. I remember an interview I had. We made it halfway through the interview. The guy stops the interview. He says, stop right now. He turns his seat around. He could turn the seat around. He turned the seat around and looked at the wall. And then he turned back around and says, I'm going to hire you right now. Based on what I'm hearing and based on what everybody else has said about you, I know you're the person for the job. Picks up the phone, calls the HR person in, sit down. How do we figure this out right away? How do we get him started right away? It was reputation, man. It was reputation. It was reputation. Even now as an entrepreneur, I get phone calls from referrals. Reputation, reputation, reputation. Man, his firm does excellent work. They go over and beyond. I've never had any issues with an SOW, with an agreement. Not only do they handle the agreement, they do more. Reputation. Most folks, when they ask about business, they don't ask about what's your reputation in the business world. They want to hear like little secret, ways of making money. But if you say something like, just have a good reputation, they're like, oh, okay. And it's like, no, for real. Just have a good reputation. Why does this matter? In work and finance, trust is the currency that multiplies opportunity. It's trust. It's trust. And how does this work? Remember we talked about the principle of compounding interest? Well, guess what else compounds over time? Reputation. There are people that are listening to the sound of my voice where you can't buy a job because of your reputation. And you may have had a for real change of heart, but now you have to go build your reputation doing small things to work your way back up to big things. Integrity compounds over time, and it creates influence and access. I've been introduced into certain circles because of reputation. Work with presidents, dignitaries, celebrities, athletes because of reputation. We let him in the room, he ain't gonna go crazy. You would never know that this person's a celebrity. I promise you can have him in the room. He'll be fine. I just had a client of mine say, I just recommended you to a group of doctors. And they asked, will he be fine, dealing with folks who are highly educated, doctors, et cetera? Say, you won't know the difference. She said, I told him, you won't know the difference. Reputation. 4 pillars of life. When it comes down to it, are you following these principles? Do you have a solid, stable table to build your life on? Thank you for watching Inspirational Perspective. If you love this show and you want to see more content like this, you can go right here. And if you like this subject and you want to see much more content that we have available for you, just click the button here. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to watch the show live, 7 a.m. every Sunday morning on WVON Radio, or you can catch it right here on YouTube or Facebook.com/Coach Linnell Harris. Be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so we can get more content just like this to you.